I think that's it is so sad right now. Like America is obsessed. I mean, I'm in the USA, and even like democratic countries are obsessed hating white men. And like literally, I went to Columbia University. Basically, everything comes down to how white men, screw Africa, screw the rest of the world, how they colonize the whole thing, and they made everything worse for everybody else. And they are guilty of every single crime that exists in this human history. And the fact that Mao killed like 50 million human beings, Stalin killed that many human beings is not taught, not even discussed. And right now, at this very moment, when these people are talking about the reparation of slaves that happened many, many, many decades ago, that there's slavery exactly happening at this very moment that we are talking about. That right now there are 300,000 North Korean defectors hiding in China. Most of them are women, and they are all being sold in the brothels. They're getting killed. They're being raped every single second. But what corporation, which is celebrity who is like cares about justice is standing up? Nobody. Hollywood is begging to please China no matter what cost. I get censored on YouTube when I talk about the women, North Korean women suffering on Twitter and YouTube. They censor me. And if the Me Too mattered in the West, why talking about Me Too in the under communist like rules is not something they support? So this is hypocrisy that we are in. It's like so sickening, and I don't even know why the West is tolerating this behavior. This is like madness.
You, in fact, were traded many times as a human being, you and your mother, into some dreadful situations. Staggeringly, you all managed, or you and your mother in particular, managed to stay in contact. You even managed to find your father and arrange for him to be brought over, but he was very, very ill and died. That it must have been soul destroying, and at times, will you actually describe how at one point you determined that you were going to end it all, and you found a freedom in that, but then resolved that no, you'd fight on for your mother's sake, and I assume your sister and father as well at that time. So you went through a great deal of pain at the hand of a man who was himself deeply conflicted. Plainly, in some ways, he was capable of feeling, and he felt for you. In other ways, his circumstances, I suppose you could say, he was locked into a regime in his own mind and behaviour of brutality and inhumanity. And so there's this terrible tussle going on in him between his better nature. He even looked after your father's grave, I understand, when he finally died and was buried, and the brutal way that he abused you.
I know, I think that's why life is so complicated. It's like nobody's pure evil, nobody's pure angel, right? And when people decide to divide things into black and white, that's like when I can see that's when we make the mistake. Nothing is that simple. And like, of course, that's what I learned in my journey. But about like what I think about what I went through is that now I remember when I went to New York, my editors were telling me like, "Oh, Yeonmi, you gotta get a therapy," and I never heard such a thing, therapy, in my life. And it's like, oh, people in the West, when they have problems, they get PTSD and they go therapy. And of course, I asked, like, how much is it? It's like $200 per hour. And I was literally thinking, the fact that you know what trauma is, you don't need a therapy. And my people in North Korea do not even know what therapy, what like trauma is, right? They don't even know what injustice is. And now, after I'm going through all of that, I'm gonna be resentful what I went through. Makes no sense why I survived. And that is Alice's perspective. That's what I learned about all this. And you always can come up with your own interpretation of what happened and your own conclusion and how you respond to it. And that's why, I don't know if you read my book, that I begin with my book saying there are two things I'm grateful for. One was I was born in North Korea, and two was I escaped. If I didn't born in North Korea, I would not know so many things that I know now. And in a way, the things that I saw almost keeping me sane in the West, that I'm not like bitter and resentful about, like if people like, I cannot believe in the West are these young millennials so bitter and resentful. They think they are the most like systemically oppressed generation. And I'm like, I don't even know what to say to them at that
No.
point.
It's just so important that we understand how fortunate we are and how important it is that we understand the basis of freedom and we go to defending it instead of attacking it all the time. But now, to move on, you resolve that China isn't going to work. You go through many terrible experiences. I think greatly to your credit, you opt to work in a chat room, which can't have been much fun, but it was better than prostitution. And you then identify a pathway out through Mongolia, a circuitous route to escape to South Korea. And you discover, and you write quite powerfully about it, Christian missionaries who are prepared to literally risk their lives to help people they don't know. Again, a bittersweet thing. North Korea, an atheistic regime, you'd never sort of heard of the concept of God or had Christian faith outlined to you. You met these people. Tell us a bit about how that all unfolded for you.
Yeah, so my thinking about my encounters with the Christians have evolved a lot. So when I actually met them, their price for us to be rescued by them was us becoming Christians. And I thought it was really funny that in North Korea, for me to survive, I had to believe in Kims as gods. But in China, for me to rescue, I had to believe in gods again. And also another irony is that I don't know if you knew that Kim Il-sung, the first Kim's mother and father, their grandparents were Christians. So Kim
Really?
Il-sung knew, yes, they were very devout, like Christians. So North Korean regime copied the Bible. So they said, "Oh, I love you so much. This universe chose me as a god, so I'm giving you my son. So my son dies, however, but his spirit is with us forever. That when we die, we join them in a paradise." So that's the thing. Like people say, why they believe Kims are gods, but then same theory. Why did the people believe that Jesus was the son of God? The same thing. If you can believe that Jesus was the son of God, you also believe that Kims were gods with that like information restriction. And because of that reason, North Korea is #1 Christian persecution country. That this like religion directly reveals what they have done, which was they were copying the whole thing. And when I met these Christians, like I was like, what is God? What is Jesus? And then I still remember my fellow defector told me, "Darling, don't worry. Put the God into Kim Il-sung and put the Jesus to Kim Jong-il." And so you plug them in, everything makes perfect sense, right? They know how much hair in your head. They know what you're thinking. That's why after my escape, I still believe that Kims were able to read my thoughts. I was even afraid to think. And that's how they did. And then the only thing these Christians were told me that I was a sinner. And I think that's what it really gave me a lot of trauma at the time. That it was the first time I realized what I have done wasn't a good thing. I should have just killed myself. I should not have survived. But obviously, I think they were more talking about sinner perspective, that all of us are sinner. But, for someone going through all of that, you keep telling them you're a sinner, you cannot, repent it. It's a very hard thing, right? There's no path out. And so I became really not resentful of that whole experience. But now I'm thinking about it, they were the only people actually risk life for the right thing to do, right? All these people talking about inclusiveness and talking about embracing people, like blah, blah. None of them taking actual real action to do anything and helping others. And they were the people, even though they demanded me to become Christian and more applying this strict Christianity rules, but they were still the people, the most selfless people who saved other human beings. And that's why, it's so complex. That's why there's no pure angel either, right? Everybody is imperfect. Even though they are monsters or they are good people, they all have imperfection. And that's it's up to us to make a reconciliation with those parts and always choose a good, what they could have offered us.
Thank you for watching this episode. We appreciate your support. If you value vital conversations like this one, be sure to subscribe to the channel there and also click the notification bell to stay up to date with new releases.